She was known only by a nickname, not a real name, just a single word that sent chills through the spines of U.S. soldiers. Apache. In the thick jungles of Vietnam, death wasn't always quick. Sometimes it came slowly, and it screamed. Apache didn't just kill. She wanted soldiers to feel everything: fear, pain, hopelessness. She was a woman whose actions still haunt the memories of survivors, and whose cruelty had no limits. To understand her, first we have to go back, before her name meant anything at all. It all started in 1954, when the First Indochina War came to a bitter end. After nearly a decade of fighting, the French colonial forces were defeated at Dien Bien Phu, and Vietnam was split along the 17th parallel. The North, under Ho Chi Minh, embraced communism with support from the Soviet Union and China. The South, led by Ngo Dinh Diem, aligned with the West and received military and financial backing from the United States. But the peace was fragile. Between 1955 and 1960, the Viet Minh in the North reorganized into the People's Army of Vietnam, while Southern Communist sympathizers formed the National Liberation Front, also known as the Viet Cong. They began a brutal insurgency campaign, bombings, ambushes, and assassinations designed to destabilize the South and break the U.S. influence. By 1961, U.S. military advisors were training South Vietnamese forces, but it wasn't enough. The situation spiraled quickly. By 1965, over 125,000 American troops had boots on the ground. Airstrikes intensified. Villages became war zones. The jungles turned into traps. The Viet Cong didn't fight like traditional armies. They didn't wear uniforms. They blended in with civilians using guerrilla tactics, including booby traps, tunnels, and nighttime raids. They were everywhere and nowhere. And unlike conventional forces, they recruited across age and gender lines. Men, women, and even children became essential parts of the Viet Cong network, spying, transporting supplies, and sometimes torturing prisoners. That's where Apache entered the story. Not as a ghost from the shadows, but as one of the most feared figures to ever come out of them. Apache wasn't her real name. That's what the U.S. Marines called her. They gave her that nickname because of how brutally she tortured prisoners, like the Native American warriors who scalped enemies. But what she did was worse. Her true identity was never confirmed. No birth records, no official military file. But U.S. intelligence reports and survivor testimonies painted a clear picture. She was a female Viet Cong commander, likely in her late 20s or early 30s when the war escalated. She wasn't just a fighter. She was a specialist in psychological warfare. Some accounts placed her unit near Quang Nam Province, just south of Da Nang, where U.S. forces faced relentless guerrilla assaults. The area was known for its underground tunnel networks, thick foliage, and unpredictable ambushes. Apache didn't lead a large army. She commanded a small but lethal unit, highly mobile and disciplined. They moved quickly, struck hard, and then vanished. Her team targeted isolated patrols and captured soldiers, sometimes within shouting distance of U.S. bases. And when she took prisoners, death wasn't immediate. That wasn't the goal. She made them scream, deliberately, so others could hear it echo through the trees. So fear would travel faster than bullets ever could. And soon soldiers started learning exactly how terrifying she could be. By 1966, there were whispers of a woman who didn't just kill, but tortured in ways that left even hardened soldiers shaken. At first, these stories were dismissed as fear-driven exaggeration. But then the bodies started showing up. Men vanished during routine patrols, often in areas previously considered low risk. They would be missing for days. Then someone would find them deep in the jungle, tied to trees, or laid out in rice paddies. Their faces were sometimes destroyed beyond recognition. their fingernails pulled, their skin burned, their bodies marked with deep slashes, deliberate. In one of the earliest confirmed cases, a young Marine corporal was discovered bound to a tree with his eyelids cut off and his ears sliced off. His chest bore a crude carving of the Viet Cong star. There were no bullet wounds, no signs of a firefight. He hadn't died in combat. He had been held, tortured, and left to die. Medical reports confirmed the use of sharpened bamboo spikes inserted under the skin, a method used to maximize pain without causing immediate death. The cuts weren't fatal. They were designed to cause infection, shock, and psychological destruction. Apache didn't strike at random. She picked moments when American patrols were thinnest. She used silence as a weapon, ambushing just one or two men at a time, enough to terrify, but not alert entire platoons. Her brutality was surgical, controlled, and calculated. What truly set her apart was what happened afterward. She didn't try to hide the victims. In fact, she positioned the bodies in places where fellow Marines would find them, sometimes within eyesight of the base perimeter. It was a message that no one was safe, not even off the battlefield. By late 1966, her name wasn't just a rumor. It became something passed from unit to unit. Soldiers began refusing to patrol certain trails at night. Fear spread faster than enemy fire. Apache had become a psychological weapon all by herself. But soldiers weren't just whispering about her anymore. Someone was listening, and he was about to do something about it. That's when the hunt started. U.S. commanders in I-Corps Tactical Zone, particularly around Da Nang, began compiling reports from multiple units. Descriptions from wounded survivors and recon teams started to line up. Details like a female voice giving orders in Vietnamese or bodies found with identical patterns of mutilation became too specific to ignore. Intelligence officers began logging incidents in central Vietnam that fit the same pattern. Special attention was paid to the Hill 55 region, a key defensive position southwest of Da Nang. It had seen multiple gruesome recoveries of tortured Marines. Locals, under pressure and fear from both sides, began mentioning a female figure moving with small armed units through the nearby valley. Her identity remained unclear, but her reputation was unmistakable. It was during one of these intelligence briefings that Gunnery Sergeant Carlos Hathcock first heard Apache's name mentioned with certainty. Known for his calm demeanor and unmatched accuracy, Hathcock had already confirmed dozens of kills and had earned respect across Vietnam. But unlike most snipers who operated at long distances, Hathcock was known for crawling deep into enemy territory for days just to make a single shot. Apache's pattern disturbed him. She didn't just kill for tactical reasons. She tortured as a message, and that crossed a line. For Hathcock, this wasn't about a mission or a number on a kill list. It became a personal objective, not for revenge, but to protect, to stop a nightmare that was paralyzing the men around him. Her existence had become a threat not just to lives, but to the mental endurance of every Marine in the region. Born and raised in Little Rock, Arkansas, Hathcock learned to shoot with a .22 caliber rifle, hunting squirrels and rabbits to help put food on the table. At just 17 years old, he enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, drawn by a deep sense of duty and a desire to serve. By the early 1960s, he'd already earned a reputation for exceptional marksmanship, eventually winning the Wimbledon Cup, one of the most prestigious long-range shooting competitions in the U.S. By 1966, Hathcock was in Vietnam, part of the 1st Marine Division, deployed as a sniper. In the unforgiving jungles around Da Nang, he became known not just for his kills, but for how he operated. He often moved alone or with a single spotter, crawling for days through thick undergrowth, sometimes covered in mud and insects, just to reach a perfect position. His patience was unmatched. His calm was unnerving. But despite his reputation, Hathcock didn't see himself as a killer. He saw every shot as a means of protecting his brothers in arms. He avoided unnecessary violence. But when Apache's atrocities became impossible to ignore, something in him changed. From that moment on, he began studying her movements the same way he would stalk a sniper or a high-ranking enemy officer. He listened to captured radio intercepts. He tracked the bodies, where they were found, how long they'd been missing, and the distance between each attack. A pattern was beginning to form. Apache was operating with a purpose. So was Hathcock, and soon their paths were going to cross. Hathcock wasn't alone in all of this. His partner and spotter, Lance Corporal John Burke, worked closely with him. Each lead pulled them deeper into enemy territory, and with each step forward, the risks grew. Apache wasn't just hiding. She was moving through ground she knew better than anyone. And she wasn't just trying to kill intruders. She wanted them to suffer. For Hathcock and Burke, this wasn't a standard operation anymore. It was a hunt with two predators slowly circling each other in the jungle. But danger never stopped Hathcock. It only sharpened his focus. By early 1967, the intelligence trail led Hathcock and John Burke straight to Hill 55. This hill wasn't just a piece of high ground. It was strategically vital. Whoever controlled it had a clear line of sight over roads, villages, and troop movements in the valley below. Both the U.S. Marines and the Viet Cong understood its value, and both were willing to fight for it. The terrain surrounding Hill 55 was a sniper's nightmare. Dense foliage, unpredictable elevation shifts, and tight bamboo groves made every step a risk. Enemy fighters could hide anywhere, and Apache, with her deep knowledge of the land, had the upper hand. But Hathcock wasn't rushing. His method was simple: observe, adapt, and move only when absolutely necessary. He and Burke stripped themselves of any unnecessary gear to stay light and quiet. They carried only the essentials: an M40 sniper rifle, ammunition, water, and camouflage netting. Every movement was calculated. Every breath was controlled. For nearly 4 days, they crawled through the jungle, inch by inch. At times, they were only feet away from enemy patrols, lying completely still in the underbrush as armed men passed. Any sound, a twig snap or a cough, could have given them away. They didn't speak. Sleep came only in brief moments, broken by the constant risk of discovery. Eventually, they reached a vantage point, just overlooking a narrow jungle clearing. Through his scope, Hathcock saw her. Apache stood surrounded by about a dozen Viet Cong fighters, talking casually, gesturing toward a hand-drawn map. She looked at ease. No visible stress. No sign that she suspected American snipers were close. She was wearing simple black clothing, like most Viet Cong guerrillas, but stood out by the way she moved. Confident, commanding. Her fighters listened closely. No one questioned her authority. She was laughing, perhaps joking about an ambush or planning her next move. Whatever it was, she didn't know death was less than 800 yards away, quietly watching from the jungle's edge. Hathcock didn't rush the shot. He watched. He waited. He studied her behavior, her movements, and the way her men responded. He needed certainty. And now, after weeks of tracking, days of crawling, and hours of silent observation, he had her. What came next would be quick. Hathcock steadied his breathing as he lay flat against the damp earth. Apache wasn't armed at that moment, at least not visibly. But Hathcock didn't need to see a weapon. She was the weapon, and he knew exactly what she had done. He exhaled slowly and squeezed the trigger. The round struck her just below the neck, piercing her chest and exiting through her back. Her body crumpled instantly, no time to scream, no time to react. The men beside her froze for a split second before panic took over. They scattered, dragging weapons and supplies as they fled into the jungle. But Hathcock and Burke didn't move. They didn't fire again. There was no need. The mission wasn't about numbers or ambushes. It was about one single target, one person, and she was down. They remained in position, waiting, watching. Hathcock confirmed through the scope that she was dead. No movement, no breath, no recovery. For Hathcock, this wasn't a victory. It was a necessary end. Apache's reign had finally been cut short. But death doesn't erase the past. What the Marines found afterward only deepened the horror. When they reached the site where Apache had fallen, they approached with caution. Her reputation had made even her corpse feel dangerous. They expected a trap or something hidden nearby, but there was nothing. Just her body lying still in the dirt, a small hole through her chest, and the smell of jungle heat and blood. Up close, she didn't look like a monster. Her face was calm, but her hands were soaked in blood that hadn't yet dried. Under her nails were pieces of skin and dried tissue. A few feet away, they found drag marks leading into a shallow ditch. There they discovered a South Vietnamese soldier, barely alive, his wrists tied, his body mangled. His mouth had been stuffed with cloth to muffle his screams. His legs had been burned with heated wire. According to the medics, he had likely been tortured just a few hours before Apache was killed. If Hathcock had arrived even half a day later, the man would have died in agony, alone and unseen. In a small camouflaged hut near the clearing, Marines found what could only be described as a torture station. No documents, no orders, just pain. The tools were primitive, including razor-sharp bamboo splinters, rusted wires twisted into makeshift clamps, pliers caked in old blood, and cloths used to gag victims. The floor was stained red. The air was heavy with rot. There were no written records, no list of names, no way to know how many had died there, but it was enough to confirm everything they'd heard, and worse. This wasn't about interrogation. This was about inflicting as much suffering as possible, then letting the survivors carry the scars. Apache's death didn't change the course of the war. The Viet Cong kept fighting. Ambushes continued. The jungle stayed dangerous. But for the men stationed around Hill 55, something shifted. The invisible hand that had been tightened around them was suddenly gone. For many, that single bullet had ended a waking nightmare. But for those who'd lived through her terror, the war never really ended. Veterans who served at Quang Nam and Da Nang in the mid-60s still remember her. They remember the nightmares, the screams in the jungle, the silence after discovering bodies. Some soldiers refused to talk about it. Others couldn't forget. Apache became a ghost story, a warning, proof that the Vietnam War wasn't just fought with bullets, with fear. And it wasn't just Apache. She was one of many women caught in the fire of war. By the late 1960s, women made up nearly 40% of the National Liberation Front's forces. They did more than just support roles. They planted mines, carried rifles, smuggled supplies, and passed along military intelligence. Some acted as medics. Others slipped into American-controlled zones, posing as civilians, collecting intel, then disappearing before anyone suspected a thing. Most were never identified by name. They worked in silence, melted into the villages, and disappeared into the forests. But Apache stood out. She wasn't born with that cruelty. She came from a war where brutality became normal, the war that shattered any illusion of fairness in combat. There were no rules. The U.S. military used Agent Orange to destroy the thick jungles that shielded Viet Cong forces. But the chemical didn't just kill trees. It poisoned water sources, caused cancer, and left children with birth defects for generations. Napalm burned through villages, sticking to skin, killing slowly. Cluster bombs scattered across farmland, turning homes into death traps. On the other side, the Viet Cong laid ambushes using spiked pits, tripwire grenades, and explosives hidden inside toys or food containers. They didn't just target soldiers. Anyone seen cooperating with Americans could be executed as a traitor. There were no front lines, No rules, no safe zones. It was a war where survival often meant becoming as ruthless as the enemy, and Apache was born in the middle of it. She didn't get a trial. There was no prison cell, no interrogation, no file with her fingerprints. Just one bullet and silence. But that wasn't unique. During the war, thousands died without ever being identified. Bodies were lost in jungles, sunk in rivers, and buried in unmarked graves. Many families were left with no answers, uniforms without owners, and photos of people who never came home. In that chaos, people like Apache rose and vanished. Her story in many ways mirrors the war itself. Violent, unfinished, and filled with questions no one ever fully answered. The war officially ended in 1975 when Saigon fell and Vietnam was unified under communist rule. More than 58,000 Americans died. Over 2 million Vietnamese perished. Survivors returned home with wounds no doctor could see. Many wrestled with PTSD, addiction, broken families, and isolation. The war followed them into their homes, into their sleep, and into the years they had left. Stories like Apache's were passed around like ghost stories. To this day, no one knows who she really was. There are no military records linking a specific woman to the nickname. No family stepped forward after the war. No photo ever surfaced with a confirmed identity. She had no known rank, no badge, no past that history could pin down. Some believe she was a trained operative. Others think she was a local, possibly someone whose family had been killed by U.S. forces, and who turned that grief into hatred. There are even theories that Apache was more than one person. Multiple women given the same name by Marines as a way to explain the cruelty they witnessed. But too many testimonies, too many consistent details, and too many victims point to one chilling truth. She existed.